This is the ARTvocates podcast, brought to you by Streets Projects Foundation, Enugu Youth Entrepreneurship Network, supported by Voice Global.
This is the ARTvocates podcast.
The land is green, it's green, oh, oh. The land is green, it's green, can't you see? I can see all the harvest is ready, 'cause he told me so. It's green and it's all mine.
Hello guys, and welcome to the Advocacy Podcast. In today's edition, we'll be talking about environmental sustainability. But before we begin, my name is Tochukwu Ubesie, and with me here are
Tom Ito,
Favor Vincent Efe,
Tosin Babalola,
Chekube Isaac Eze.
This podcast is brought to you by Street Project Foundation and Enugu Youth Entrepreneurship Network, supported by Voice. Advocacy is a movement that encourages young Nigerians to use their various art forms to speak up and not be silent about the social justice issues that affect them. Now let's get started. In order for us to understand this environmental sustainability, I want to give us a scenario. Imagine you went out of your house with a huge bundle of cash and you wanted to spend a little amount of money on some things. So you go there and you spend a little there and a little here and a little there. And then you don't realize what's going on until you get back to your house, and then all of a sudden you don't have any money left. So I use this example to show us how we as humans relate with our environment. We have a lot of resources on Earth, and somehow we use it. Of course, we have to use it. We're on Earth. But then the problem comes when we don't actually replenish those things or preserve them, and then we actually go further to harm our environment. Now, going back to our scenario, if we actually invest our money, we have enough money to buy whatever we want. And in the same way, if we actually invest in our environment and take care of our environment, then we are able to have more. The earth is able to give us more things, more resources that we can actually use. Now, over to my fellow cohort. Favor, what do you understand by environmental sustainability?
Okay, environmental sustainability is basically just about the well-being of the environment which we live in. A saying says, how you lay your bed is how you sleep in it. So how you take care of your environment is how it is going to be sustained. So that's basically what I have.
Okay, that's a good one, Efe. Now over to you, Tom. What do you understand by environmental sustainability?
Okay, to me, environmental sustainability are those deliberate efforts we make to protect and preserve our environment, to protect the global ecosystem. Personally, I think our lives is greatly influenced by the kind of environment we find ourselves. And according to World Health Organization, about 24% of death could be traced back to some avoidable environmental hazards. So our environment has a very important role to play in our lives as human beings and to the planet at large.
That's a good one. That's a lot though, 24%. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, Efe, what do you have to say to that?
That was quite an interesting fact. It just shows us how as human beings, we actually have a very large amount of control of how long we will live on Earth. 24%, like literally guys, your life is in your hands. So I think we should take this issue very seriously.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about sustaining the environment, sustaining. But then what actually causes this environmental decline? Chekube, can you help us?
Okay, I think one of these environmental decline that we face is open defecation. Okay, we have a couple of them, but open defecation, this is the simplest form you can actually describe this is when people are supposed to use the restroom, they're not using it, they're using it, they do their thing in an open environment, thereby causing various health issues, which is very, very bad. I remember back then in school when a particular, where we stay in the compound, a particular landlord in that section was supposed to provide for the students restrooms that they could use, okay? And some of the ladies were seen doing what people call flingy. They will do it and they will just dump it, and it's very, very annoying, okay? I think that is one of the reasons why we as a people, it has to do with you being accountable. It has to do with you being responsible for your actions, okay? People do these things, why? Because they feel nobody's going to hold them accountable for it, and it's really, really bad.
All right, Tosin, what are the effects of these open defecation? Do they actually have an effect on us, or, is it just shit, or does it have an effect?
Yes, open defecation, when you pass around most times and you're seeing feces on the ground, excuse me, even the smell, it's enough. Like,
like it's repellent. And then most times you notice that there are flies all around perching on the feces. And then most times when you find children or food, because usually those kind of things occur in rural areas, and you find houses close to the place, women cooking very close to the refuse dump and all of that. So it poses a threat to their health. It's a problem to the health. It's also not very good for the environment. And also it creates some sort of bad reputation for tourists. People come around and are like, whoa, what's the idea? What do you want me to think about this environment? So it shows how unkept the community is.
Okay, another effect of environmental decline is that it causes unemployment. So hear me out before you crucify me. Imagine someone who is all dressed up, feeling touche in his white outfit, going for a job interview that has a deadline, and then from nowhere, the flingy just strikes him. Poof! So he ends up going very late to this interview because he has to go home and change. So that is an effect.
Okay, that's a good one. To add to that, I mean, it also pollutes the environment.
Yeah,
have you ever seen a place where, you have dumps and dumps of these things and then you pass? I mean, how does it smell?
Horrifying.
I don't even like to go there.
Okay, now...
Sorry. Very quickly, to add to that, I think one of the causes of open defecation is the fact that there are not enough toilet systems, okay? Because if you go to those rural areas, you discover that there are some buildings there they were built without toilet systems, which is one of the causes of that as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, moving on. Tom, can you give me another example of what causes this environmental decline?
Okay, another thing that causes environmental decline is, I should say, synonymous to open defecation is improper waste disposal, like plastics, rubbers, and the rest of them. So you go around the streets, you find lumps of refuse somewhere. So those stuffs eaten in gutters, roadsides. So it's kind of pollutes our environment. So that's another type of environmental decline.
So here's the fun fact. Did you know that a plastic takes about 450 years to 500 years to completely dissolve? So you can be alive and this plastic is just looking at you there like a vampire. So while this is happening, while this thing is still going into dissolvement, it intoxicates your health because it actually evaporates into the air that we breathe. So you should be very careful about how we dispose these plastics.
And in the long run, these things actually come back to us. You know what they say, garbage in, garbage out. So it's like that. By the time you throw this nylon plastics into the gutters, when rain falls most of the time, these things clog the drainage system and then it floods the environment. So what you do, it might look little, it's just a pure water ladder. But by the time these things are combined and they come back, it's usually in very full force. You find floods destroying buildings, drowning things. So please, it's a collective responsibility.
Causing a lot of traffic on the road and making us come late to class.
And to add to that, a lot of people just fling the things that they use. You're in a cab and then suddenly you see someone just throw things, put their hands out of the window and just throw things out just like that. I mean, we all learned in the same primary school, or is it secondary school, that it's bad to dispose things like that. So I don't know why people still do that. Now, Chekube, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think there are some societies that when you go to, you don't throw things anyhow. Okay, I've forgotten what they call them, mobile court or something, mobile police. They'll grab you and immediately you face persecution. Okay, I think the government should also look into that. And it also has to do with our consciousness of our society. We want to live in a better society where we can be healthy. And someone was saying that, if we want to go scriptural, we can say cleanliness is next to godliness. Okay, let us be clean. Let us know how to take care of our environment. The moment after using something, dispose nicely. I believe there's a waste management board who are supposed to be in charge of these things. So I think that's what I have to say.
I think there was also a time the government actually enforced that. I think he just phased out like he usually does in Nigeria. Then even when you are traveling, there are usually waste bin in the car, in the bus, where you eat, you throw it. But I think after a while, it just phased out. So I think the government should also bring back that into the system.
We will be going on a short break, and when we come back, we are going to be discussing the effects of improper waste disposal on our environment. Stay tuned.
Mother's Day, where they make me want to choke.
They call me say my shop be done born. Oh, I done the hustle since morning. I no get one never. I'm in love. Them say I no fit marry her.
Now so they rape me. Nobody wishing my matter. My husband beat me every day and night.
This man a choker. In school I no get work. Matters in my head, I know if it's sleep for night. Why you be saying, hustle, no, they pay for night.
This is real life.
Oh, why you be saying, suffer too much for my country.
This is real life.
Oh, why you be saying, everything's scatter for country. They make me want to choke. Oh no, this is real life. Oh.
You are listening to
The ARTvocates podcast.
That was a beautiful song, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for staying with us. We'll now be discussing the effects of improper waste disposal on our environment. Tom, what do you have to say about that?
Okay, talking about the effect on the improper waste management in our environment, I would like us as human beings to consider other organisms, other animals that are occupying this planet with us. The birds, the animals, the fishes. If we disturb this environment, they are also at risk. The one of the effects includes water poisoning, like the open defecation, the refuse. All these things end up in our rivers. And when they end up in the rivers, you know what happened to the fishes? The water gets polluted. And most times we feed from these rivers. We take fishes from these rivers. So imagine you eating a contaminated fish, a fish that has been poisoned. So at the end of the day, it bounces back to us. That's why we suffer so many illnesses. So taking care of our environment is very, very important to avoid this water poisoning.
Okay, I love that. Okay, now, Efe, can you give us another example of an effect?
Okay, another major effect is that these things actually affect our farmlands. They make them more infertile than it usually should be. So that is why you could actually be planting the crop and then it wouldn't plenish as much as it should be. But because of all these things, such as bush burning, when you burn trash on the land, which is also a part of improper waste disposal, this would affect your farming system drastically.
All right. Chekube, it's been a while since we had your voice.
Yes.
Okay, can you give us another example of of something that causes environmental decline?
Okay, there is oil spillage. Oil spillage is basically the release of liquid petroleum hydrocarbon into the environment. And this is often caused by human activities. And yes, it is a major form of pollution. Sometimes these spills don't just happen on water, but also on land. And that is when it can be deemed as land pollution.
So, Tom, do you agree with what Chekube said?
Yes, definitely. Oil spillage is a major problem, major environmental issue in Nigeria, especially in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. If you are opportune to visit a state in the Niger Delta region, I bet you won't spend up to a week in that state, because the rate of environmental pollution you have there due to oil spillage is so alarming. It's so alarming. You even wonder how people manage to survive in that area, because there is no farm, the water has been polluted. You see fishes dying of the river, the oil is spilling, there is a vandalization of those properties. So the oil spillage level in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria is so high, and I think government really need to do something about this.
Okay, to also cite an example to what he just said, I remember a few years ago we went to do a documentary in Omadino community. Omadino community happens to be one of the highest oil producers in Nigeria, I think in also West Africa, okay? Yeah. And but if you get to this community, you realize that their water is bad. Like the community people, the fishermen over there, they were complaining that they couldn't do anything meaningful. And before you know what's happening, the young people resort to social vices, stealing, even bonkery, what they call bonkery, like illegal mining, and what's it called?
That's illegally mining the petroleum.
Yes, and it's really harmful.
Okay, so quickly, Tosin, can you give us a cause? What causes this oil spillage?
Yeah, oil spillage. Oil spillage can usually be caused when there's a fault in the drilling. Usually when these companies, on the sea, there's usually problems with that, and when there's a spillage, it covers the whole surface of the water, suffocates the fish, and then sometimes it even spreads to land. The farmers can no longer make use of their land and all of that. And also there is the issue of vandalism, pipeline and tanker accidents most of the time, which also destroys the land. This can also extend to water poisoning, and then usually the issues of people's careless acts.
Okay, we can see that all these issues are interrelated. Every single one of them has something that causes harm to the environment. And I would like us to talk about one last thing. What else do you think causes this environmental decline? Tom, can you help us?
Okay, another thing that can cause environmental decline is carbon emission. Now, carbon emission is the release of carbon into the atmosphere. This could be through vehicles, burning of fuels, generators, cars, and the rest of the thing. So it actually affects the ozone layer. It depletes the ozone layer, which leads to what we call global warming. So it's a very important environmental issue we have to discuss. And I think it is not given that much attention, much publicity like it should have been given. So it's a very critical environmental issue we should talk about.
Yeah, and this has adverse effects on our environment as well. Increase in temperature. Yes. As we can see, once you go out now, the sun is just something else.
So high.
So these things are also part of the effects. There is drought. This is when there is little to no rainfall. And there is also desertification. This happens when normally fertile land becomes a desert. So we've seen it happen so many times. A place that is usually fertile and produces a lot of fruit, all of a sudden it becomes a desert. So, Efe, do you have something to add to that?
No, I think you basically just spoke my mind on desertification.
Okay. All right, now we are going to move. We've talked a lot about the causes and the effects and all of those things. So we are going to move to the solutions. What can we actually do to make things better? Let's start this off with Tosin. Tosin, what do you have to tell us?
Okay, for the issue of the open defecation, I feel governments should ensure that public toilets are built and made available. And I would also like to say this to landlords, especially those in the rural areas. We know that the house rent is cheap, yes, but please, you people, landlords in Abuja and the whole of Nigeria, please try to at least build a toilet for your tenants. They are also human beings and they deserve to live as humans. Thank you.
Okay, talking about open defecation, it might interest you to know that in 2012, Nigeria lost about 455 million naira due to poor sanitation.
Wow, that's a lot.
And as we talk, Nigeria, as at 2019, emerged the #1 open defecation country globally.
We are topping the wrong charts, basically.
Yeah, that is about 47 millions of Nigerian use open defecation. And in 2019, October specifically, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, signed an executive order to tackle open defecation, which is aimed at making Nigeria an open defecation-free country by the year 2025.
Amen.
But up till now, we have not really seen the impact of that bill. So that's what we are still looking up to.
Okay, I think another way that this issue can be tackled is proper education, because a lot of people are not really educated well enough to know that these things are really harmful, okay? Because one of the reasons for that is primitive mentality. You just think, this is how our forefathers used to do it, or let's do it like this, or do you understand? So I think education has a very important role to play in that regard. Then for the oil spillage, I think adequate care of pipelines should be looked at, okay? The government should try as much as possible to monitor these things, to maintain these things. They have been there for years, okay? The moment you notice that a pipeline is damaged, try as much as possible to change it before it spills and causes environmental hazards.
Okay, another thing we can do is to plant more trees. People cut down trees to do a lot of things. We know you want to cook with this firewood, but Madam Nkechi, if you do not have air to breathe, because these trees help us to generate oxygen and carbon monoxide, you will not be able to cook. Now, who they are alive now in the chop? So please do not cut down trees and plant more trees.
I would also like to add, concerning the oil spillage, especially in the Niger Delta, I'd like to make an appeal to the federal government of Nigeria to please look into the issue of those people, the Niger Deltans. It's not easy, and I think it's not even fair for you to come to our land and then you take the natural resources that we have, and at the end of the day, you destroy the lands, destroy the fishes, the water. These people, their source of livelihood is even destroyed. They can no longer farm, they can no longer fish in the river, and at the end, how would they not vandalize? And then these governments, they don't make any take any step as concerning those companies, direct the companies to actually clean up those damages. They can be cleaned up. But when the government does not take a step towards this, the rate of vandalism is going to continue. So I'm making an appeal to the government to please ensure that these companies, Shell, Escravos, all of those companies, to do the right thing. Ensure that they do the right thing. Thank you.
Okay, now to add to what has been said, I think proper waste disposal should be made available. I think there is not enough waste bins. Something as simple as waste bins, we don't have enough of it. And also, something I will admit that I'm guilty of is improper disposal of plastic. And that's because I don't have anywhere to throw them to. Like, how do I throw these things away? So I just pack them, keep packing them, and then next thing I'll just, throw them somewhere because I don't have any place to throw it to. So I think more companies, more plants for recycling should be made available, and then collection centers should be made available. Now, quickly, everyone, can you give your final thoughts before we close?
Okay, very quickly, I'm really passionate about the what Tosin said about the Niger Delta stuff, the oil spillage. But let's look at it from this direction as well. What are the response level to oil spillage? Okay, I think the government should try as much as possible to always respond, because what you see at the end of the day is that you see people trying to start carrying buckets, start carrying gallons to go and pack oil, and it's very dangerous. It is very dangerous. So I think this is something that should be looked into. So regardless of where you are, who you are, regardless of your age, try as much as possible to be conscious of your environment. What they call it green lifestyle. There are a lot of programs out there that are promoting green lifestyle. What it simply means basically is to know that whatever you're doing, try as much as possible to use your environment to feed itself. Thank you.
Okay, another thing I think the government can do is to minimize the routes of transporting petroleum chemicals from the Niger Delta to as far as north, because those pipelines promote the vandalization. Most of those pipelines are not maintained properly. I think if the routes are shortened, like we have these refineries close, and sometimes these refineries are not even functioning properly. So if we have these refineries close to where this crude oil are taken, it can actually reduce the effect of environmental pollution.
Okay, we as people also have a role to play here. So I would say, please do not encourage flingy, preserve more jobs in the country, and also try to build more trees. They are very important to this society.
In addition to what Efe have said, I would say it's all our collective responsibility. This Nigeria now our own. this earth now our own. The small thing where you they do, you get big effect where you get on top of this earth. So make it a personal responsibility to say, this earth is mine, I'm going to take care of it, and nothing's going to happen to it. Thank you so much.
Okay, in conclusion, the effects of this environmental decline are slow in showing up, and so most people end up not paying attention to it. Most people think that their various actions seem small and that they've only contributed a little in harming the environment. But then there is a saying that little drops of water make the mighty ocean. We all have our roles to play, just like my cohorts have said. We all have our roles to play in sustaining the environment, and together we can actually make a difference. Once again, the Advocacy Podcast is proudly brought to you by the Streets Project Foundation and Enugu Youth Entrepreneurship Network, supported by Voice. Thank you to my cohorts, Favor Efe, Tom, Chekube, and Tosin.
Hi.
A big shout out to our media consultant, podcast curator, Mr. Femi D, for his enormous contribution to the success of this production. Once again, my name is Tochukwu Ubesie, and thank you for listening.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Stay alive.